Part 6. Live and Let Live. Chapter 24. Discovering Your Way. Each individual on this planet has their very own and unique way of handling things. Our own preferences, our own standards, and our own ideals. Those could have come from our parents, from the people that we grew up with, from peers and the teachers of our lives, but most of all it comes from our sensibilities and our sense of fairness, our sense of right and wrong as it appears to us. No matter where we have picked up these traits, our way is unique to us, and just like our field of vision and our point of view, our way is often a closed box. It is often habitual, and it is often subconscious to who we really are. Sometimes our fears make up our way, and sometimes when we relate to others we are actually relating our fears and our prejudices against reality. Sometimes those fears are justified and sometimes not, but our way can be a way to sacrifice real life by way of avoiding fears. If we constantly find ourselves saying no to opportunities, then perhaps that is the fear element encroaching in our way, which actually robs us of our freedom as we talk ourselves out of those situations and those conversations, which in fact may lead to greater awareness, knowledge and experience of the world. Even though our way is entirely unique to us, it doesn't stop many people from trying to communicate their way and trying to put their views and their way onto others and make others live in that lifestyle. It doesn't become any more obvious than this when someone has children and they try and impart their way onto their children as if that will give them a good start in life. Sometimes it does, and sometimes it just gives those children extra habits and crutches that they could do without, and extra things to think about when all they want to do is live their life their way. As we have seen, no two people ever see life in exactly the same way, so as a philosopher one must be very careful imparting your way onto others and using that as the standard, because your way certainly isn't the best way. It is just one way. It is not the best option, it is just an option, and a philosopher knows that imparting their way onto others often leads to arguments and tension and confusion when they can't decide which way to go for the best. It is important to appreciate that there really is no right and no wrong way, except in the eyes of a non-looker, and to use something which is right would be completely wrong to someone else, so who are we to judge? In fact, as we have seen, sometimes imparting our way onto others actually actively hinders them from learning the lessons in life, and if we prevent others from making the mistakes that we made, maybe they will not learn those mistakes and fall into those pitfalls anyway. Sometimes saving someone time actually hinders the person by not allowing them the space to grow. It is always important for each of us to be allowed space to grow, even if that means sacrifice on behalf of the friend or the partner. If you allow someone the space to grow, then maybe you will grow together. Maybe you will grow closer together, and maybe you will grow faster together. If you don't allow someone the space to grow, then maybe you will grow apart. You will grow to dislike each other, and maybe even to hate each other, which may lead to arguments, insults, and confrontations. And at that point they may wonder why they opened their mouth and mentioned their way in the first place. If it's going to lead to a confrontation, maybe it's better to not bother. The only way to get around that situation is to observe your way as a standard, and if you relax your standards, then maybe you will let people live their way. It is up to the philosopher to decide how much weight they put behind the ideal, and if that ideal is paramount, then they will struggle to get their own way, and if that ideal is flexible, then they may find an alternative to their own way, and different opinions and different ways of life can deliver life in maybe a different way, maybe even a better way than how you expected, and sometimes getting your own way isn't always for the best. So to unbendingly sound off your way and expect your way to be followed to the absolute letter is sometimes a way to put the situation into a tiny tight box, and anything outside of that box will not be acceptable. That is a way to restrict life, and it takes away freedom and your enjoyment out of life when you stipulate ways and expect people to follow them. It isn't necessarily important to discover all your ways and all the hidden aspects of yourself which makes up you, but if you'd like to find out, the easiest way is to ask other people, and they will hold up a mirror towards you, and they will hopefully highlight the things which you find difficult in life, and maybe even highlight the reasons why. Letting someone else sound off about all the reasons why they don't particularly like you is often the best way to reveal your dark side, your hidden side, and all those areas which you would rather keep buried. The trick is to appreciate their views on what they are trying to tell you, even if you don't necessarily agree with them. Sometimes that mirror image of you will be distorted, reflected, or even flipped, so that you don't actually recognize the mirror image those people are holding up towards you. At that point, it is important to realize that that is probably how you appear in their world, not necessarily how you'd like to appear in your world. In their world, things are completely different to your world, and so if you want to find out how you appear to other people, it is best to ask other people and to find out. If someone has gone to the time and the trouble of informing you of a problem that they have with you or with something that you do, then take that on board and apologize. The last thing you should do is to deny all knowledge of that action, and if that person accuses you of not listening, at some point you must not have been understanding that person, and so if you always turn around and say, "How dare you, of course I was," then you are missing the point of their good advice. To a philosopher, being accused of being someone who is not listening is probably the furthest from the truth, because as a philosopher they are always on constant listening mode, and so you must appreciate that yes, you may always be listening, but no, you may not always understand everything completely and correctly, or at least you do not appear to understand the person from their point of view in their world. A difficult person will always complain and deny the things other people see about them in their world, and sometimes it's easy to miss things right under your nose, particularly if that has become a habitual way of being. It is important to observe all those hidden aspects of yourself, and do not defend your way as the ultimate way, but simply bend and be flexible so that your way is flexible towards everybody else's way. This doesn't mean giving in at every opportunity. It doesn't mean bending over backwards to put everybody else's way above your way, because sometimes there is nothing worse in life than someone taking you for granted and trying to dominate your life, because then it turns into their way over your way, and at the end of the day someone is still trying to get their own way. A good compromise in life is perhaps thinking about the fact that you will get your way some of the time, but you won't get your way all of the time, because everyone lives in their own world and they want their way some of the time. Second of all, second best is sometimes first best, because sometimes if you had have got your way, life would have changed and you wouldn't have actually got what you wanted, but because that thing may have been delayed or set up in a different way, second best sometimes means that you have a break or you have a pause between what you wanted and actually what you end up with may in actual fact be better given that delay. For example, imagine someone had arranged a meeting to see someone on the Monday, but they had to cancel that meeting because they had other plans. In the meantime, it was raining on Monday and your plans would have been washed out anyway. Rearranging those plans for Tuesday actually meant you had more time on the Monday, and they had more time and energy on the Tuesday to do what you needed to do together. So sometimes delays in communication can actually help, and even though you might not always get your way, there is always a way to be found if you keep playing the game and trying to negotiate a compromise. If you do find yourself struggling to get your own way in life and to get yourself heard in life by other people, then everyone has the right to be heard, and if you deny someone the right to be heard, you are actually dominating, and you are actually trying to get your way all over again. Perhaps it is best to try to analyse how much you attach significance to your way and how much you attach significance to being heard, because really, who cares what you think? Of course, the only person who really cares is us. So the only person who can change our cares is us. Openness and freedom comes with personal responsibility, and the only way that you'll have personal responsibility is to let others have theirs. Again, we come back to live and let live, because if everybody had personal responsibility over their lives, then it would be easy to live and let live, because everybody will be conscientious and deliberately thoughtful over everybody else. In reality, people are not conscientious, people are not thoughtful, and if you expect other people to be thoughtful towards you, then unfortunately you may be let down. People are not always considerate, even if they say they are considerate, and even your best friend or your partner may claim to be considerate, but be completely blind to your needs in the heat of their own. Basic consideration is not a standard in life, and some people just do not have that facility. If they are blind in their own world, then of course they are going to be blinkered, and their tunnel vision prevents them from seeing outside of their reality. To a philosopher, someone who shows consideration to them is actually a huge gift, not something that they were ever expecting, and it is a bonus in their everyday life. In fact, to a philosopher, everything in life is a bonus. Everything that they are given, every new piece of information, every new sight, sound and smell they are given, everything they learn, everything they are shown, and everything that they are provided with by other people is actually not something that they were expecting, simply because a philosopher expects virtually nothing from life, and everything that they are given is most welcome. Trying to get one's own way all of the time may close down those opportunities and close the doors of those huge gifts, and sometimes people will only want to share things with us if we appear open and approachable and amenable. And open and approachable and amenable certainly does not mean getting our own way. Those two things are poles apart. So instead of fighting the moment and fighting everybody else in the moment, it is a matter of letting go of those tensions and fears and allowing what is to happen. Even if it means doing something that we don't want to do, because the sooner it starts, the sooner it's over. So the sooner you can get on with whatever it is you have to do, the sooner you can get back to your own space, your own time, and maybe even your own way. Chapter 25. Who's the boss? If trying to get your own way turns you into the boss, then nobody likes a boss, especially if they are bossy bosses. Nobody likes someone who dictates and dominates. So if you find yourself being the boss at work and having to get your own way, then that might lead to an ego trip, and the other people around you will sense this and will start to talk about you behind your back, because no one likes an egomaniac who is just trying to get their own way just because they can. Even bosses can put things in a way which doesn't sound like their way, but sounds like the best way for the business. Even bosses can approach things professionally and sensibly, and they can work things out so that their employees don't feel like they are under pressure. They feel like they are in a business and responsible for their own actions. Employers and bosses don't have to use professional business ethics to cover up the fact that they are actually in fear, and it is that fear mechanism which makes the boss emphatically dictate their way over everybody else. The more we rant and rave and be in fear about not getting our own way, the more we will not be appreciated in life, and usually the more people will ignore us and we will not get our own way. It's like the child who immediately has a tantrum whenever anything goes wrong, and they go on a rant and a rave trying to get their own way. In fact, it does the opposite. Any parent who is faced with a ranting and raving child will probably dig their heels in and make sure that the child does not get their own way, simply because they are being difficult about it. Even now, in the 21st century, some adults resort to ranting and raving and throwing things around in an attempt to get their own way. But as soon as voices are raised and things start flying around the room, that is the moment when the other people in the room are closed in their mind to your way, and they are adamant of their way. And if you start behaving like an animal, then they will treat you like an animal, and nobody gets anywhere. The thing to do is to be open, even if that means taking a step down and coming down off your high moral values and to living and letting live. Sometimes it is the hardest thing of all to say I was wrong, to apologise, and to allow another person to live as they choose, even if that other person chooses to live completely against how you would live. Even if that person decides to dye their hair green and have tattoos and nose piercings and everything else. That doesn't mean to say they are less happy than you or more happy than you, and that doesn't mean to say they would be more happy if they followed your way. There is also an English proverb, horses for courses. What this means is every horse is different on every course, and no two horses see the same course in the same way. So one horse may jump high and run fast, and another horse may jump low and run smoother. Who's to say who wins the race? Well, ironically, perhaps in philosophy, no one ever wins the race, because no one is competing against anybody else. People are only competing against themselves and their own self-image. It is important to realise that any fears and projections that anyone projects to other people are actually their own worst fears materialised, and what people hate about themselves are actually projected onto others. So if a person doesn't like people messing around, then that person probably messes around and doesn't particularly like themselves for it. If the person doesn't like somebody else being lazy, then that person is probably lazy and they are just trying to cover that fact from the world. Living and letting live means that if someone needs to be lazy, then that is entirely possible. If someone needs to be angry, then that is possible. If someone needs to be silent and on their own, then that is possible. It means being open and aware to everybody, not necessarily above or below yourself, but actually on a level playing field. Just like the colours of the rainbow, they can mix together without interfering with each other, and the world is not black and white, it is multicoloured chaos. The sooner the philosopher gets used to that fact, the better. Chapter 26. Getting a Life. Because we are not given the manual of life when we are born, most of us have to make up the rules of life all on our own. This basically means making up a story about life where we attempt to put life in some kind of context and to make sense of something which is largely incomprehensible. There is no point and there is no meaning to life, so it is up to us individually to create a point and a meaning which seems right to us. There is no path of life, there is no magic formula to follow, there is no recipe which makes a happy, creative, wonderful life, no matter what others may tell us. They may tell us to get a life, and we may go through life thinking that the next big thing will make our life complete. When we ask other people, they may say we must go through school, and we must go through college, we must buy some kind of vehicle, we must find some kind of partner, we must dwell in some kind of house. Each of us must find some kind of career which we may or may not be good at, and that career should provide us with enough income to secure our family, and after we have our family, then surely we need a bigger house and a bigger car and more money. Throw in a few holidays, gadgets, Christmas time treats, and there you have the formula for a happy, contented life. Unfortunately, that formula is not the way to live an ideal, happy life. It is just the way some people decide to choose to live life. Some people do not go to school. Some people do not get married. Some people do not get a job. Everyone is different and every life is different, and to some, finding their career is the most paramount thing in the world. To some, bringing up and raising children is the most paramount thing in the world, and surely that is what they are alive to do, and that is why they are there on this planet. To some, having children is probably their worst nightmare, and simply being by themselves, enjoying their life, and having friends and family is the most important thing for them. The next big thing on the horizon doesn't always guarantee life security, and sometimes gaining car keys and the freedom to drive in life, having to pass that test and having to tax and insure that vehicle, only leads to a set of new problems rather than clears up the problems of insecurity that person had in the first place. If someone is feeling insecure, then no amount of careers and homes and partners and children can take away that insecurity. In fact, sometimes if someone is feeling insecure, those pressures of life can make them feel even more insecure, and if they cannot turn to their partner or their children for support, then having those pressures on top of everyday life just makes everyday life even more unbearable. Sometimes commitment in life can encourage someone that they are on the right track and that they are actually a great human being, whereas sometimes that same commitment in another's life could make them feel overwhelmed and underappreciated, particularly when that involves jobs, partners and children. What happens when a child is born where none of the two parents particularly want a child, and they have to bring up a child for the next 20 years? Of course, if you ask around, some people may say, well, when you have children, you'll change your mind and you will automatically become a loving, wonderful parent. Unfortunately, that's a lie. Some people, when they have children, do become loving, wonderful parents, and some people, when they have children, don't, particularly if they never wanted children in the first place. Out of 7 billion people walking around on this planet today, nobody may notice or even care if another few children are born onto the planet, and they may not even notice if the parents are struggling to raise them. If a parent has always wanted children, but those children turn out to be difficult to get along with, then they may feel underappreciated, and they may wonder where the satisfaction lies in amongst all that hard work. Sometimes even money cannot cure all ills, and if someone is feeling particularly depressed, no amount of money or winning the lottery will change their life for the better. Sometimes even people who win the lottery find themselves in a predicament because they have more money than responsibility, and all of a sudden they have no money and they have too much responsibility. So the freedom to earn money and the next big thing is sometimes an opportunity to fail. Some people work themselves to death thinking that the next big thing will be a huge paycheck in the bank, only to realise that that huge paycheck hasn't actually paid for what they really wanted, and even a huge diamond ring on their finger doesn't necessarily mean their life is now complete. The next big thing, no matter what or who it may be, isn't necessarily the next thing that you need to get to in order to be happy. First of all, in order to be happy, you must be happy right now with everything that you have and everything that you haven't, because the latest gadgets may take away that feeling for a few days or a few hours, but a philosopher realizes they must be secure within themselves from the inside out, rather than to expect temporary external devices to do it for us. Just as a doctor should be 100% healthy so that they don't inadvertently affect their patients, a philosopher should ideally hope to be secure within themselves so that they don't inadvertently take on all the weight of the world. Before they get there, they are helping themselves and putting themselves through the land of self-discovery. If there is no next big thing, no huge giant leap to reach for on the outside, then to a philosopher sometimes the next step and the next big thing is to go inward and to explore the inner landscape of themselves to find their own freedom from within. No one can put a price on freedom. No one can put a price on self-security. Sometimes self-security is the one thing which is most important in life, despite the distractions of the next big thing and the distractions of modern everyday living. Chapter 27. Freedom to be normal. What is normal? What is normal for one may not be normal for another. So no two people could ever agree on what normality is. Despite that, people attempt to be normal every single day, and if they are abnormal, they get that pointed out to them and condemned for that matter. To some, normal means lying in bed for most of the day and then going out at night. To others, they get up early in the morning, they work hard, and they do not go out at night. Normal is a state of drinking alcohol and seeking entertainment to some, and for others, normal is a night in watching the telly. The subject of normality can actually disturb a philosopher because they realise that they are outside the realms of normal habitual living, and as they wake up to themselves, they may realise that normality, or what is perceived as normality, is actually as far from reality as it is possible to get. Many people around the world, they find themselves outside of the normal circles of life. They find themselves outside of chit-chat and gossip. They find themselves outside of shopping and luxury goods. Others may see them as weird, lonely, or as the outcast or the outsider in the world. It is normal to be the outsider in the world. It is normal to feel like the outcast because everybody is sensitive to everybody else, and everybody else seems to be doing what appears to be normal, so everybody else must be right. If everybody else has a partner and a car and a career, then that must be normal, and if you haven't got those things, then you must be abnormal and an outcast. Many people have many friends. They may have 10, 20 or 30 acquaintances that they can contact and communicate with on a regular basis. Other people are perfectly fine having a handful of friends, maybe even one friend, or maybe even no friends. Does this make them abnormal? Does this make them an outcast? No. It just makes them another person on the planet who is connected to other people in other means. By reading newspaper, by connecting to the internet, by watching the TV, and others in the news and on the TV may appear normal because they do things that others like to do. But that does not mean that we have to do those things in order to be liked, in order to be loved, or in order to fit in with the rest of society, because there is no fitting in with the rest of society. There is just fitting in with a small group of friends and what they like to do, and if the person acquired a different set of friends, then they would like to do something else, and that would appear normal. Normal is subjective, and what makes a man is subjective. Sometimes men who aren't particularly interested in cars and football and women and all the usual men sticky out chest things that men do are seen as abnormal by those who do follow that story as the story of the best way to live life. This is an illusion. There really is no best way to live a life. And so if you are a lady who isn't interested in fashion and perfume and makeup and clothing, then that does not make you an outcast. In fact, it makes you unique, and in that way you are special. Not extra special, just ordinary special. Special in the fact that you are unique, and if you are expressionate in your uniqueness, then that makes you normal. If you are afraid to express your uniqueness, then that makes you normal. Because everybody is afraid that they will not meet the right partner in life. Everybody is afraid that they will not live their life and have an interesting, significant life. Everybody is afraid that they will be overlooked and ignored. Everybody feels insecure. That is normal. In this respect, everybody seems to be doing their own thing, and everybody seems to be doing what is normal to them. It may not be normal to the rest of the world, but it is normal to them, and if that is the case, then there is no fear to be feared from that. Loneliness is normal. Getting drunk at a party and yet feeling more isolated than ever is normal. In fact, a philosopher knows that they would be hard-pressed to find something in life which does not appear normal to somebody, and if they found the right friends, then everything they do in life would appear completely normal to them, and they would have no more fears because they would have found someone exactly like them. In truth, people do not need to find a reflection of themselves to feel happy. All they need to do is to appreciate that being normal is a state of mind, and it is yet another story, a make-believe aspect of life which in fact does not exist. Being normal is not the next big thing. Being normal is not the thing which will unlock your sanity and your self-security in life. It is just a story. It is just mankind's way of making things fit into an ideal. It is mankind's way of putting things into a box and labelling things as right and wrong, while in reality, life is chaos, and if you get anything back from life, then that's a bonus. Everything else is just a story which others may have told you, or a story which you have told yourself, which actively prevents you from being who you really are, whoever that may be. Chapter 28. Live and let live. In order to be carefree, first you must be free of cares. That does not mean you have to be careless, it means you have to be careful about your actions and your thoughts and your speech. If you deliberately harm someone else, then that someone else may turn around and deliberately harm you. To a philosopher, a core principle of I mean you no harm can often be a very productive lifestyle to live by, because if you mean others no harm, then you will not be trying to gossip and complain and to antagonize others. You will be living and letting live. The degree to which a philosopher is at ease with their world, the outside world, outside of their influence and outside of their view, is entirely up to them. For example, the Amazon rainforest is being chopped down at a rate of 5.5 square kilometers per day. To what extent does a philosopher really care about the Amazon rainforest is up to the individual. But if they really do care about the Amazon, isn't it time that they moved out there and made a difference to the world? Because if they don't, who will? Someone else who is unhappy about their part of the world may turn to politics and become a politician in an effort to rectify those things about their world that they don't particularly appreciate, and they think that being a politician is the way to solve that problem. A victim of crime may become a police officer. An animal lover may become a veterinarian or a farmer. There are many things in life which need fixing, which appear broken on the surface, and if only you or somebody else like you could input just a little time and energy into that situation, then maybe those things could be rectified. To what extent a philosopher runs off to recover the Amazon rainforest or becomes a politician or a police officer is up to them. It is often important to realise the things which you can change and the things which are beyond your control. Some things are broken and cannot be fixed. Some things are broken but do not need fixing, and other things appear broken but are actually perfectly fine. Living and letting live is a choice. It is a dilemma. How much we input our lives into the world and how much we let the world affect us. If our partner is a drug addict or is addicted to alcohol or some other form of substance abuse, to some the answer would be to force them to go into rehab and clean themselves up. The other person may really appreciate all the effort that you have gone to, but if they are in the mind to stay in their own world and to lead their own life, then no amount of pain and suffering will divert them from their path, no matter how much input you may or may not have on that situation. At the same time, you don't want these people to wallow in their own self-abuse, because that will lead to an early death. So how much you interfere in somebody else's life may be even a life or death situation, where you think that your input is the only thing saving them from ending their life early. Maybe your input saves someone from a dodgy marriage. Maybe your input saves someone from moving into a disaster of a house or a disaster of an idea, where you know for a fact that if they moved into that area, they would discover grief and hardship and pain. In those cases, it can often be helpful to write that person a letter or an email, which has been taken care of with time and energy and trouble, and you handle that with tender loving care, and you simply explain to those people how you feel, and then you leave the ball in their court to play with it how they wish. Sometimes your words will fall on deaf ears, or the other person may turn around and give you a backlash saying, how dare you interfere with my life? How can you predict the future? How can you know how I'm feeling? Sometimes your words of kindness may be fired straight back in your face by someone who says that you don't recognise who they are being, and what kind of friend are you anyway? If you are truly a friend to those people, and you are trying to give them advice out of kindness, then having them throw that back in your face is sometimes the most unwelcome gift they could deliver, because then you will clam up and you will not deliver your messages of guidance to them any longer if they are just going to turn around and say that you are judging them and interfering in their lives. It can be a hard decision knowing when to interfere and when to stand back. The mind says one thing, but the heart says another, and so delicate words must be used, otherwise those words may be used in retaliation. Even muttering some casual judgment in front of someone or behind their back can lead to angry communication if they find out that you have been talking about them, even if what you said was meant in kindness. Just as emails and letters and telephone conversations can be misconstrued and people can get the wrong end of the stick, certainly it is easy for others to get the wrong end of the stick, far easier for them than to actually get things right and to appreciate what is happening 100%. So the philosopher must always be careful about delivering their words, and even reticent to deliver their message. Certainly when others are arrogant and brash around them, it can be so much easier not to bother. That is the dilemma of the philosopher. If they do act appropriately, then that leads to a happy, congruent relationship with themselves and the outside world, where everybody gets to live and let live. But if they instantly make judgments and fumble the ball, then that may lead to a confrontation.